Welcome to Strip Panel Naked, I'm Hass, and I'm going to show you some of the cool stuff lurking in the pages of some of the best comics. Seeing big things hitting each other is pretty cool. Big levels of destruction from buildings and cities, getting wiped out. It inherently looks impressive because of the scale. But we saw some kind of backlash from films like Man of Steel or Avengers, where the human aspect of this large combat was being missed. Which, from a story-driven point of view, is actually kind of a big deal, because we want to emote and have a human response to the characters, and as storytellers, you want your audience to have that response. And that has to happen if we're going to have any reaction deeper than just a kind of, well, that was cool. To understand damage, both to people in the area surrounding the fight, and those actually involved in the fight, bringing the human element to the forefront can be an important and impactful tool. I briefly touched upon this in the latest issue of Panel by Panel magazine, which is the magazine I edit, which has Extremity as the feature book, and I wrote a Strip Panel Naked article in that about this page here, and how it uses a focus on Rollo in the second tier to bring the humanity into the fight. Issue 12 of Extremity actually starts with something similar, this shot of Rollo before leading into the fight that the end of issue 11 teased. If you remove that image of Rollo from the page, it's just a big fight scene of these two creatures attacking each other. It's cool, but it doesn't have any weight, specifically emotional weight. It just doesn't seem to mean anything without that panel. If you add Rollo's face back in, the page is now anchored by that, reminding you that this is who is in that big green suit, his tears and anguish being the first thing you see, so it affects your response to everything else, informing how you read each of the other moments, because you're aware now it's Rollo doing this. It's like Daniel Warren Johnson is playing off against that traditional trope of the big creatures, in a similar way to something like Pacific Rim and its reflection of the people controlling the Jaegers, giving them an emotional resonance. But what Johnson does in this last issue of Extremity is also bring in the humanity of the people on the ground, not just those in the suits. And by doing that, he reinforces the idea of scale and destruction. If we take the next page and only look at the first two panels, you completely lose any sense of that scale when focusing just on the machine and the creature fighting, right? It's because there's nothing there that tells you a size of anything else, just the size of those two against each other in the first panel. Which is fine, but you don't understand how big they actually are against anything that we can recognize in reality. In the second panel, Johnson actually makes the machine Rollo is controlling look small. He's playing it off against that thoom sound effect and its size in the panel. It looks overshadowed by everything else there. Which is the other reason why he needs people on the ground level, beyond just adding to the humanity. You can sell sheer size and destruction when it's being explained in a way we know. So he adds the third panel of Thea, small compared to the towering suit that Rollo is controlling, and now we've got the scale and the humanity in one. We see the real danger Thea is in as the person we can emote with, because she's human, but also because the sheer size of the machine, and therefore the creature the machine is fighting, we see the amount of real danger that she's in. It's so simple when you boil it down, but it is what makes this sequence so effective. And we'd see it over the next few pages in full effect, because Johnson builds a way of showing the big fight through Thea's eyes, from Thea's point of view. Here in this panel, for example, we see a big part of the fight taking place, but Thea is on the ground, in the foreground, near the big Thoom text, which will likely catch your eye, and the vanishing point of the image leads straight down to her. So even though she's actually the least dynamic part of the image, because there's a fight going on in the background, actually all the emphasis is still placed on her. She's the one truly in danger, and we're scared for her more than anyone else in this image. It handles this by putting the emphasis on her, seeing her reaction, and selling the scale by the way you only see part of the creature and the mechanical suit in the background, thus making her look particularly small. And stealing a trick from that previously seen panel has the sound effect itself be bigger than Thea. Everything is selling scale here. A page later again we see something similar, though in this case it's not the creature and the machine, but it's Clover, which is Thea's large bird, and some other creatures that have come to attack her. Clover saves Thea, and we get this image from behind her, again placed in a way like we're looking from the same angle as her, selling the size, the scale, and the danger by placing Thea smaller. But again, keeping it grounded makes us sit in similar shoes to her. It's a lot of the same language being repeated in terms of the framing and structure, but just changing up the way it's presented in the panels so it just doesn't feel repetitive, and that's a good little trick. And of course, ultimately it's establishing a language. A human character we're caring about in the foreground while a fight happens behind them, causing them to be in danger. And the fight is always being enacted by the same things, essentially monsters. creatures that have stripped away any humanity and seem to exist just to cause destruction. That's what we see through the whole opening of this issue. So once you've set that up, you can create visuals later in the story that riff on that image, similar to what I talked about in the Grass Kings episode. Johnson does the same with Nim and Jerome in this image of Thea near the end of the issue. It's very similar and should look quite familiar, because you've got Thea in the foreground in danger, hurting, and bold, while these two things fight in the background with a colour hold. And they're scaled much larger than Thea, actually unnaturally so almost, kicking up dust in very much the same way as the machine and creature did in the earlier pages. The language itself is the same, the visuals are the same, but Johnson has taken the monsters and he's replaced them with Jerome and Nim, and that adds some real deep further subtext to their relationship and to the story as a whole. And really, it's an image that would work anyway in isolation, but Daniel Warren Johnson and Mike Spicer have added this further message and meaning for those that go looking. And it's because they spent time at the beginning of the issue setting up that visual approach. In the end, not only does it work alone to help sell the danger of Thea early in the issue, it comes to teach us something about Jerome and Nim and the way they are seen, the way they treat the world, the way that they appear to be these reckless monsters causing this destruction around Thea. It's really great stuff by Johnson, Spicer and the team, and it goes to show that with this building of language, which is going to be unique to your book and your story, it gives you a lot of room to play around with subtext and storytelling within that. Thanks for watching. This episode was, as always, made possible by the patrons at patreon.com/strippanelnaked. For their support, they get brand new exclusive content every single week from me too. Check it out if you'd like to support the channel. You can get my comics magazine at panelxpanel.com, and I'm on Twitter at HassanOE. Finally, hit subscribe and that notification bell to keep up to date with all the latest episodes, and I'll see you next time.